someone you can connect with, even in, you said charismatic, you could see eloquence in speaking, you know, just take a look at rhetoric and being able to talk in a specific manner, because that's what the voters for this election will be looking at. What are they saying? What are they meaning? Besides just an eloquent speaker, but yet answering the questions.
Whoever we construct, though, Cara, you don't have particularly high hopes for the Democratic Party against the president. What is the holdup, in your opinion? Why do you think the president will remain victorious?
Sure, and maybe I'm wrong, but I kind of looked at this midterm, Haskell and Hawley, as kind of a precursor for the presidential election. And even though it was a great turnout and powerful, and it moved a lot of people, there was so much hype, it was fantastic, but Republicans came out and win, and they control the Senate right now. He's an incumbent. I just feel like it's going to be an uphill battle.
I think you're pessimistic. I think the Democrats have a better shot in 2020 than you may think. There was an analysis done on 530 that added up the popular vote totals from the midterm election. And the popular vote totals in states that Trump needs to win, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, were deep blue in 2018. Does that tell you anything, Rose, or is the midterm voting population too different from 2020 for us to make a projection?
Well, you know, turnout is typically the thing that discounts what you get at a midterm, but because we had the high turnout this time, I think that I could pay some attention to that and think that that would be pretty significant. And in terms of both parties, I think they do have to rethink how they're going to get the 270 electoral votes in the batches that they have to get them in the states where they have to get them. And I think you're right. I mean, I think those states have sent a clear signal. Let's see if, you know.
What do you think? The more I think about it, the more it's interesting to me. What do you think about Anna's analysis? The best shot, just everything being equal, would be with a female presidential candidate.
Again, I don't think you can sort of pigeonhole it that way. I mean, again, the voters, I think, really do. I mean, at the end, we count numbers, we make assumptions based on those numbers, as though that everyone met the assumption, when really it's just, you know, conglomeration. But so I think people are still going to be very candidate focused. I think they're going to look at what that person brings to the table beyond just sort of the first characteristic you notice about them when you see them.
Have you ever seen studies, anybody? Have you guys ever seen studies that measure what happens as more and more women take power in government generally? It's dramatic, the impact that women legislators and women governors and women executives tend to have on governments. More people are covered under healthcare, there's more pragmatism. For some reason, women are consistently more pragmatic as lawmakers than men are. I don't know what accounts for that, but nevertheless, they are more pragmatic. Maybe there's a, you know, maybe Valerie's right to be more optimistic about this upcoming Congress, because we've got more women in this upcoming Congress than we've ever had before. It's still overwhelmingly male, but still trending in the right direction.
And I think, too, we don't have to necessarily say it can be a woman that would make the difference. I think it's open to a lot of diversity for the upcoming election. And I also think the midterms have set a stage for it, whether it be political party and their behavior, but also voting behavior, as we've seen.
I would like to open it up for just a little bit. Anybody have any comments or thoughts about the midterm election or this upcoming presidential election? Kevin?
Well, I haven't heard anybody talk about polling. My students are very distrustful of polls.
Polling.
I think the polling for the House races this year was pretty good from what I saw. But then for the Senate, it was still off in a lot of situations in my mind. Indiana, the Senate race up there was pretty much even. The poll you looked at, the Republican won by 12 points.
That is bizarre.
The polling in Missouri was pretty even between Hawley and McCaskill, and Hawley won by about 6 points there. And in Florida, most of the polling showed both the Senate and the Senator Nelson and Andrew Gillum, the Democrat, having, if not comfortable leads, several points that had them, lean Democrat, and that's not laid out. So I don't know.
How do you account? I should just pull your chair up. How do you sit over there by road? How do you account for that?
Well, I think
why is polling? Because it was off dramatically in 2016. It was off quite a bit in
it was
2018.
better this year, I think, in 2018 than it was in 2016. I don't know if I don't have the science to back this up or anything. When I was reading 538 and some other pollsters, the Republican internal polls were telling a different story than the public polls that were going on out there. So I don't know if public pollsters need to do a better job at polling more Republicans into their polls. I don't know. I haven't seen any studies. I tend to think that maybe some people lie to pollsters when they get called.
Why? Why? I've heard that so many times. Why would you lie to a pollster? Why? Who cares? Why would you lie?
I think if you have a distrust
slow
of
afternoon.
media or pollsters in general anyway, which some people do, and you get a call and it's a close race, I don't know, because you would think a close race would increase turnout on both sides. But I think people want it to be closer than it is, so then they can have some sense of satisfaction afterwards. I told the pollster that I was going to vote for McCaskill, and I'm going to go in there and vote for Holly. Holly won by 6 points, so you're wrong again.
There was a study conducted that says if you believe that your candidate is in a close race, you'll be more likely to vote. And actually, I got lots of, my Facebook was bombarded with Holly and McCaskill, with Holly and McCaskill ads. And every single one of the Claire McCaskill ads showed a poll where they were tied. Like there was never a single one that showed an outlier where she was up by 5 or 6 points. We got momentum. There was never the we got momentum. It was always this ship's about ready to go under. Set your hair on fire and help us out.
I think that's trying to give people the sense of urgency that their vote does matter, that they need to go vote. That if they think that their guy's ahead, they may not go vote.
You have run for office.
I have.
And you could be the telltale explanation for why every vote matters.
Yes. I lost by a pretty narrow margin.
What did you lose by?
6%.
Which is?
It was 648 votes.
648.
If I flipped 322, I won.
If you had flipped 322, you
Yeah,
won.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. I cannot imagine.
344, I guess it was.
Right, okay. Thank you, Kevin. I can't account for those polls, why the polls are consistently off. I tell you what, 2020, it's all, I don't know if I'll read a single poll in 2020. I can't account for that. I don't know why the polling is off. Do you trust any polling, Rose?
No.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, again, before you can, you just need to know so much about it that you don't normally get in that quick little blurb or just in that little, screen image you have. So without knowing, what the margin of error was, who was conducting the poll, generally no.
I think one of the more interesting let's go back to a race that Anna was talking about, because this kind of talks about polling a little bit. Anna had mentioned the Georgia governor race, which featured Stacey Abrams, a Democrat, who was running against the guy in charge of voting, George something Kemp. His last name is Kemp.
Right.
And right now it's very, very narrow. And some people are suspecting, like he was caught on tape during the election saying, listen guys, talking to supporters, I'm afraid all these people are going to come out and vote. Like he was not talking about voting as civic duty and something we should all encourage. He was talking about it as a partisan threat. And Georgia has been one of these states working on voter ID laws, which are really controversial and some call voter suppression. What can we expect on that front going forward? Can we expect more voter ID laws? Can we expect more shenanigans on that front? Or can we expect more transparent elections?
It's been going on since the United States was formed. I mean, I don't know why we would expect it to end now. I saw reports, and I don't know if they were true or not, but I saw reports that in African-American areas that the voter machines were sent without cords in that Georgia race.
How about that?
Yeah, without power cords. So it could have been an accident, but it's suspicious when the guy that's in charge of voting is on the ballot. So when his opponent's an African-American woman.
Was that Valerie?
That certainly doesn't look good.
Right.
Does it?
So I think, I mean, there's, you know, time and time again in the South, there have been different laws put in place to try to suppress minority voting. I think it's just continued.
But we're talking about voter ID. Who, the reason why they say we got to pass voter ID laws is to prevent fraud, whatever. There's not much fraud out there. But is that really that much of a barrier, requiring somebody to have an ID at the polls?
I think that it's a
What did they require before?
that you had to register to vote and bring your voter ID
Okay,
card.
right.
So, and now you have to bring your driver's license, has to be a picture, or not a driver's license, but a picture ID.
So is that a big deal?
Well, to people who don't have a car, who can't buy the voter ID, it's charged. There's some states that pass laws where you have to be able to get a free one. But to older people who are incapacitated, maybe in a nursing home, that can't do things like that, they might, you know, be able to vote otherwise and not if they can't get an ID. Or some people are prevented from getting an ID if they don't have a birth certificate. I've had a lot of people that were driving, you know, that tried to help get their driver's license. They were born in Mexico, and now at the DMV you have to present your birth certificate, and they can't get it. So, yeah, I think it's a problem.
What other suggestions might you make, Rose or Valerie or Cara? What other suggestions might you make to increase voter turnout? Not just like encourage the people, like is there changes to policy that you yourself would embrace to increase voter turnout? I'll start with one. Holiday. Election day, federal holiday. No classes, no work.
Let's put it to them with a show of hands. Would that matter to you to have a holiday? If you had the holiday, would you use it to vote?
Let's say, yeah, let's put that to a vote. How about, it makes no difference whether you get a holiday or not, hands go up. Okay, so sizable minority there.
Early voting.
Oh, let's talk about that. What would you put it at, a week? 2 weeks, a month?
2 weeks to a month.
2 weeks to a month?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that right now. Who wants to extend voting to not just election day, but election week, or election 2 weeks, or election month, like so early voting? It doesn't matter if we, okay, put your hands down, thank you, looks like a majority. It doesn't matter if we have early voting or not, hands. Number of folks, so again, a sizable minority, but still, looks like majority. So I just think that would increase voter turnout.
Just having a larger window.
Yeah.
For voting.
I'm sorry, I went so high there, but yeah, nice. Oh, ma'am.
Mike in the back.
I think that a lot of college students, like, they work the entry-level jobs, so a federal holiday won't matter to them because they're going to be working either way.
Why would they be working if it's a federal holiday?
Because McDonald's is still open on a federal holiday.
McDonald's doesn't close on federal holidays?
No. Like, a lot of college students are working those jobs, and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Like, they're going to work on Veterans Day, they're going to work on Labor Day, they're going to work on Memorial Day. Like,
Has anybody been tracking the stats for Colorado? Because Colorado has mail-in ballots. Do they get higher turnout?
Yeah.
Do they get higher turnout?
I don't know, my brother was in Washington, and we had it there too.
Washington has.
And that's what we're talking about. I waited in line 25 minutes to vote, and he spent 5 minutes to drop it in the mail. Just
Hunter?
Do you not have a federally funded program to like get people registered? Like,
No.
get them registered?
Federally, the federal government actually has very little involvement in the practical execution of elections. It leaves it almost entirely up to the states, which does a couple different things, has two major implications. It's a really interesting question. First thing, the idea that a national election can be rigged one way or the other is almost laughable, because for an election to be rigged, you would need a concert of 50 states, or like a very large number of states, to work together. So it's not like the federal government's just going to tilt the scales and everything's going to fall one way. All the states would have to be working in concert for each other for an election to be rigged. And that being said, because the election systems are run by the states and not by the federal government, they are uniquely vulnerable to hacking from foreign governments, particularly Russia. Russia, who tried to hack, I don't know, there wasn't many reports. I think Russia largely stayed out of the midterm election, but man, they were knees deep in the presidential election of 2016, and they hacked voter machines in 20-some states. It's a great question. I don't know, do we want it that way? Do we want a federal system, a federally run? You say no, Anna?
I wouldn't. I mean, right now, it's, like you said, it's harder to get into because each county has their own county clerk that collects those ballots and then sends them to the Secretary of State. So if there is corruption, it's gotta be widespread. And if there's one corrupt, well, maybe we can get rid of that one, rather than diluting the whole pool.
Yeah, and it kind of isolates.
Right.
Just because like Georgia's corrupt doesn't mean that like Alabama will be.
Right.
Great question. Other questions about voting in general or this past election or politics in general? Sir?
I just wanted to add about maybe possibly making Election Day a holiday. Our high school did that when I was 18. If we were 18 and registered and all that, they let us out a half a day. And
That's outstanding.
as you can imagine, every student took advantage of that, but I bet you less than 10% of those kids actually went and voted. So they just took, let's go home and play video games. I'm just wondering if that's how everyone would do it. People would just consider it maybe just a day out of work and just not go vote.
Statistics on that. Kevin, would you know statistics on voter holidays? Yeah, I don't know the statistics on that. That's a great question. I do know that
Because it's a good idea, like, it sounds like a good idea, but the only example I have is
Travis,
nobody did it.
did you vote?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to physically sit down and fill out your ballot? 5 minutes, 20 minutes? I mean, it was a complex ballot this year.
Probably like 5 minutes.
In Kansas City, they had 42 ballot items. 42. That does not include the amount of time that you're waiting in line. 42 ballot items. I'm of the opinion that these mail-in, and Colorado's on it. Colorado's ahead of the curve. Mail-in ballots, I think, make the most sense to me.
The other thing I think that they could do to make voting easier is the centralized polling locations. Like Greene County had 2, I think, this year. I know when.
I want to say 3.
Okay. So when I was running for office, I went to multiple polling places during the day, and I had people that were coming to the wrong polling place. They had their old voter ID card from before when you didn't have to show your photo ID, and they would go to the wrong place, and then they'd get aggravated because they'd get sent to another one.
Yeah.
And that eliminates all of that. And a lot of people don't know where they're supposed to vote.
Yeah.
Even if they have registered. So.
Where your polling station may be close to where you live, but it's not necessarily close to where you work.
Right.
And,
In my county, it doesn't make sense where you're registered to vote, too, so.
I am, and to a lesser extent, Cara is also involved in this, turning OTC into a central polling station. So keep that in mind, by the way, if you're still at OTC or near OTC in 2020, probably by the time the presidential election, probably not the primaries, but at least by the presidential election rolls around, hopefully we'll turn this room you were standing in will almost certainly be a polling station in 2020, which would be kind of fun. Yeah, great. Go to your class and then come right over. I just wish voting was more convenient. And we hear this crap all the time, pardon my language, but we hear this crap all the time from politicians about how important it is to vote. And then at least over the last decade or so, and Anna says it's been going on longer than that, but I just have seen a growing trend over the last 10 years where we've seen legislation making it more difficult to vote rather than easier to vote. And that infuriates me. Another kind of voting that's flying under the radar. Anybody else have suggestions? Travis's was a great one. Anybody else have a suggestion for how to make voting easier? What was your barrier? Anybody that here who did not vote, don't be shy. Why didn't you vote? What was a barrier in not voting? Anybody? Who didn't? I know 100% of you didn't vote. I know we're amazing, but not that amazing. Why didn't you vote? It's okay. Yeah.
I voted.
You did vote? Oh, I'm sorry to falsely accuse you.
Some college students that aren't registered to vote where they are, but are registered to vote at home.
Yeah, we did a lot of that. Well, we registered a lot of voters, but we didn't do voter registrations. We did a whole lot of address changes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We registered almost 100 people, and I would say over 50 for new addresses.
New addresses, yeah, address changes. Because it's easy to register, it's just the act of voting can be difficult.
Yeah.
I know that,
Yeah.
I had a friend who didn't vote because she lives an hour away. And she had to be here from 6 a.m. until 7 p.m.
That's another problem with having the voting day rather than voting.
If you did extend it out for a week, I know plenty of single mothers that couldn't vote because they had to work